What's up, Punters Pod listeners? You can listen to us every Wednesday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or even watch us on YouTube. Now, let's get into the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Punters Pod. What a time to be alive! Loss number 10 for the Gold Coast. The Blues gave the Lions an almighty roast. The Dockers can't do much other than boast. And the Bombers for another week look like burnt toast. That sums up round 21 of the AFL season as I get into reviewing round 22 today and previewing round 21. Of course, Jez is still gone, but he is back next week, boys. This is my last solo pod for the season. It's good. It was only a quick 3 weeks. Jez will be back next week. Will he be ready to do a podcast? We will wait and see because he hasn't sent in his tips once again. But I've got my tips here where I was pretty bad last week, boys. I'll be completely honest, completely transparent with you. I did not read the play very well in round 21, but round 22 is here for me to redeem myself. And I am here to give you all the normal betting blacklist, betting results, all the previews, all the reviews, the player props, of course, boys, where I hit a nice one last week. And, of course, get through all the games that we have upcoming. Only 3 more matches left for each AFL team. How exciting. Then we get into wildcard. And then we get into the finals. How good is life? How good is the fucking footy, lads? I'm going to do what I've been doing every week for the last 2, and that is giving you an update of the teams I think can win the flag. My update is Fremantle can win the flag. Goes without saying, they've done nothing to disappoint us. They bet the Dogs last week. They can still win the flag. Sydney can win the flag. They've still got the talent. I know that St Kilda game wasn't all that convincing. They still end up getting the win. I still have Sydney as a team that can win the flag. And Brisbane can still win the flag. Don't get sucked in. Carlton absolutely pants them. Carlton looked very good. Carlton embarrassed them. I'll even go as far to say embarrass them. But I'm still confident Brisbane can win the flag. I'm not wavering on Sydney, of course, for the reasons I said. And the Lions especially. They won 7 in a row before that blimp on the radar against the Blues. It was a mulligan. I am still confident Brisbane can go all the way. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I also love how I haven't said Hawthorn in the last few weeks because that North Melbourne performance did not fill me with confidence. It filled me with confidence as somebody who's been saying that they won't be able to win the flag. And as I've been doing the last 2 weeks, also before I get into normal proceedings, if the season ends today, the wildcard matchups would be Geelong versus Carlton for the 7th position on the AFL ladder in finals. That would be really interesting. Down at the MCG, of course. I think, honestly, how Carlton played on Saturday night, they would knock over the Cats, but Geelong probably in that game with the experience would get over the line. And then Bulldogs versus Collingwood. If Bulldogs and Collingwood match up in the wild card, is that game being played at Marvel or does it go to the MCG if the Bulldogs are the 8th and Collingwood are the 9th? Honestly, as unfortunate as it is for Bulldogs fans, I think it has to go at the G. You get an extra 60,000 people in the stadium. I honestly think that game would go to the G and favour Collingwood a little bit because at Marvel earlier in this year, it was not all too convincing for the Dogs in that matchup, but that would be the matchups. Look, at the end of the day, obviously the 7th and 8th team would be favoured to win those wildcard games, but in both of those matchups, the Pies could get it done over the Dogs and the Blues could definitely get it done over the Cats as well. That's how it would be. But we have to wait 3 more weeks to see how that all pans out. And then I am looking really, really forward to that wildcard game. I know Jezza all season said he would not be going if Collingwood would make it. I would definitely be there supporting the Pies. I think both of the wildcard games with the teams that are in the mix right now would be great games, classics, and close contests. Boys, random player. We've been doing it the last couple of weeks since Jez has been gone and hasn't been guessing, which is probably a good thing because he never gets them right regardless. who is the random player above my head. If you're not watching on the YouTube and listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I will post that on the social media tomorrow. So go on to the Punters Pod account on Instagram, and that will be a story right there. It's a Hawthorn player. He's a good-looking bloke. He's got blue eyes. He's got blonde hair. He played in the, I want to say the Premiership era, but he never really, I think he got one flag, and he was a pretty serviceable player, but never could crack into consistently that good Hawthorn side there. So send us through on that search, on that box, the poll box on the Instagram story, who the random player is if you know him. Thank you very much. As I get into betting results, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it was a stinky week for me. Struggled to get up on a lot of games, struggled to get up on a lot of punts. Was just one of those weeks though. Many of the losses were so marginal, and it was simply down to just me misreading the way the game would go. I had a bit of a bad week. I thought Gold Coast would break their streak against Melbourne. Didn't go my way. I obviously thought Brisbane would get the better of Carlton. Didn't go my way. And a lot of these games, I had players and multis surrounded around my potential, my predicted result. And obviously, both didn't go those ways. And there's a few other games. I thought Collingwood would put in a better performance against the Cats. So yeah, it was many of those losses were just marginal. Like I didn't have a stinky week where I couldn't predict anything like sometimes you have. A lot of those were just simply down to me just once again, just misreading the way the games would go. The singles cooked me also in those games. I had heaps of teams that I backed the wrong side of. Obviously, a few of those were my free tips last week. But we will bounce back this week, and we will definitely not be bouncing back with the players on our betting blacklist. On our watch list, they are back. They are so close to being blacklisted again. It's Caleb Sarong, who had 17 touches, and Andrew Brayshaw, who had 23 touches. Both of them do not get 25 this week. The old joke all season was that both of them can't get 25 in the same game. This week, none of them got it. I'm joking, boys. Trust me, I know they're both guns. I know that game was an ugly game because of the Dogs, how they played that game. I'll get into that later. But I know as well that in this game, they aren't stressing. They're cruising. They are waiting for that first final, home final at Optus Stadium. They will both get 25 in that game, I am sure. And also, my betting blacklist on my watch list is Naz when the opposition tags. The loophole here, boys, is when Naz gets tagged, he will get less touches, but more goals. I will always chuck on if I know a tag is coming at this stage of the season. It never was a thing earlier in the year, but now Ross has shown his cards. If Naz is going to get tagged, he is going to go forward and kick a few extra goals than he would usually. So low on touches, high on goals for when Naz gets tagged. And on my blacklist last week, there was Jake Saligo. He had 19 touches this week, but was still steer clear of him. It's too hard to get the 15 value for him at 15. And if he can't get 20, I would steer clear. Jake Saligo is still on my blacklist for round 22 and beyond. Boys, players who are not on our blacklist are players on my player props. Ones to watch. I've got 3 this week again. I got 1 of 3 right last week, unfortunately. The one was pretty good, but I had this as a single. It was Josh Tracy, 3+ goals at $2.08. Read the play there that he would be dominant on Buku Kamis, as he turned out to be with those 3 goals, 2 behinds. Had Cam Rayner 2+ goals at some good value there. It was a loss. He had 1 goal, 1. Should have got the second one. He missed. And also, obviously, Carlton go on to roll Brisbane by 72 points. So it was hard to read the play there that was going to happen. And then Connor McDonald, 25+ disposals at $1.84 was also a loss. He ends on 21, I believe. Look, I really thought this was going to be a smashing in Hawthorn's favour. And because North were really competitive, what I thought was going to happen, I had this tip because I thought Connor McDonald would play a lot more midfield than he usually does. Just to give him a run there because I thought it was going to be such a dominant Hawthorn performance. North were really good on the day. Obviously, Hawthorn had to fight to win that game, so McDonald was stuck at half forward for most of the game and ended on 21. I needed 25, so a few off there. But boys, this week I love my picks. This is why you listen to the Punters Pod. I got 22 disposals. I got 4+ goals and I got 3+ goals. There's a lot of smashings this week. I think you'll pick up in my free tips a bit later on that I think this week is going to be a disgusting round where there is 4 or 5 absolute hammerings, absolute 5 to 10 goal smashings. So the goal scorers, the forwards will get some bags this weekend. HUGE McCluggage 22+ disposals at $1.90 is my first pick, however. He's slowly starting to find his form after a bad season for his standards. I predict the Lions to go very well in this game and bounce back after last week's absolute horror performance against the Blues. And I think McCluggage back at home at the Gabba will have a dominant game and a dominant performance against the Hawks in what should be a finals-like atmosphere. And I really like for 22+ disposals, I get that value. I think he's been, even though he's had a poor season, he still is managing to get around that 20 to 24 touch area. He's not really exceeding 25 much. He did a couple weeks ago, to be fair, and he wasn't too bad considering the absolute spanking that Brisbane got against the Blues on the weekend. My next pick here, boys, is 4+ goals at $2.85 to Riley Thilthorpe. Fogarty has had his good run of form, so has Tex. And after 5 goals last week, I think there's another bad opposition here I think it's Richmond for Adelaide this week. And I think the Bison will have another big bag. I just think this season, like McCluggage, he's really struggled and he comes up against Richmond this week. He had a great game against the Bombers last week. I think it's time for Thilthorpe to really turn it on before finals. There's a common theme here with all my 3 picks, actually. Obviously, McCluggage, I said he's finding his form before finals. Thilthorpe, I think he's finding his form before finals. With those 4+ goals at 285, I predict. And my last pick is a guy who has had a really, really good last 2 weeks. I've got him this week for 3+ goals and at $2.08. After last week bagging 4 goals, the week before bagging 3 goals, it's Ollie Henry. As I just said, scored 4 against the Pies last week, scored 3 the week before, coming in as the emergency. And I think it's a really... this Geelong, it's another one of these smashing games where it's your fill your boots game for all these Geelong forwards. And I suspect Ollie to be the guy who snags a few, while a few of the other Cats forwards get a bit more attention from the Bombers. Combine those 3 legs and you get $9.85 there. To recap, it's HUGE McCluggage 22+ disposals at $1.90 against the Hawks at the Gabba. It's Riley Thilthorpe 4+ goals at $2.85 against Richmond at Adelaide Oval. And it's Ollie Henry 3+ goals at $2.08 against Richmond. Boys, once again, combine them, $9.85. How can you go wrong there? I love all those legs. And I think they're all a very good chance of happening. Let's get into round 22 of the AFL season. As I said before, 3 more games to go. And the first game on this Thursday is Western Bulldogs versus North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. Last week for the Dogs, it was a pretty predictable loss. But they looked even worse than I expected, to be honest. Just their flooding play style made it a very ugly contest. I can't lie, I didn't watch this full game. In the first quarter, I saw the scores. I'm like, whoa, very, very low scoring game. Very weird game. And then when I started to watch it, it was a very strange contest where obviously Fremantle overpowered them with all that power and talent they have at their disposal. It almost felt like the Bulldogs semi-conceded. Norton, like, being managed in such a big game against such a good opposition. I know it's a game in Perth, but then again, he's from WA, so it feels like a game that you would play him in front of his family and friends in a big game against a good opposition. They decided not to play him, so it's almost like they conceded defeat before the game even started, and the game actually played out like that, to be honest. So what do you do about that? But then again, it's a game where if you're losing against Fremantle, who have only lost 2 games this season, you can't really shit on a team too much. So even though the Dogs did lose, I hear a lot of talk about them having no chance this week against North. I think that game is a bit of a, yep, we lost against Fremantle. So has everyone else. What do you do? But their opposition in North Melbourne last week had a very, very strong performance against the Hawks down there at UTAS. I got to respect the effort they put in. I've been really, really hard on North, and I still think there has to be changes somewhere in that club. I'm I'm not all too convinced with North Melbourne as a great team or contender. I don't think anyone's really think they're a contender. But earlier this year, there was people saying that they've improved and the wild card's a great result for them. They still should be in that wild card range. And right now, they're not. So I still think Clarko is a bit too happy with himself. I still think North as a club are still happy with themselves. But if everybody other than me is saying Hawthorn is a top 3 side in the competition in premiership chances, then they should be getting absolutely spanked down there in Tassie, where Hawthorn usually have a great record. But they actually perform pretty well, so credit to North Melbourne there. I think it says a lot more about the Hawks, which I will get into later. But as for this week, Clarko should be on the hot seat. I don't care about that fake performance against the Hawks last week. The Roos, to their credit, did look decent, but I still think they're not maximising their performances and should be at least in the wildcard calculations. The Dogs are locked into the wildcard area and will have a commanding performance here and teach the Roos a lesson and show the competition the gap between where the Roos are and where they should be. Dogs win, and the line is way too small for my liking here. Give me the Dogs minus 16.5 at $1.90. I think very comfortably they will get this done. And my headline is Hot Dogs. Dogs hammer the Roos home in a win that will cement them in their wildcard slots. The next game for round 22 is the Friday night, the first of 2 Friday night games, and it's Brisbane versus Hawthorn at the Gabba. Brisbane. They got absolutely pants last week, but I'm still not extremely worried. They won 7 on the trot before this game, and it was just a game where they conceded once Carlton got on the run. It feels like a game where they're like, you know what, we've lost this game. Let's not waste any energy. Let's let Carlton do what they have to do. Let's reset next week against better opposition. They will come good. I'm strong on that. I still think they're going to have a lot to say come September, come the finals, come grand final day. I still think they will be there. Even though they looked extremely second rate on Saturday, I think that match won't make or break their season. It's almost that thing that I know Jez usually likes to say where even though you don't want to be losing games, and I know they've had a few of those. Maybe it sounds like I'm being too complimentary of Brisbane in a big loss, because if this is other teams, I'd probably scathe them. If this was Hawthorn, I'd probably kill them. But I know they had that loss to GWS, and I came on here and I said that yes, they lost to GWS, but I still feel like every year the premiership team ends up having a game where they go, whoa, how did they end up losing that? That's crazy in hindsight. I'm not as convinced that Brisbane's going to go all the way to win the flag right now as I was probably 5 weeks ago, but I still think this could be a game where, once again, we look back at the end of the season, if Brisbane go on to win their 3rd straight premiership, and say, wow, it's incredible that this team lost to GWS how they did at NG Stadium and got smashed by Carlton how they did at Marvel Stadium. So I'm not all too doom and gloom. I feel like everyone's pointing to, oh, Lockie Neal went here. Look at this fucking disruption. And, oh, look at this. What happened here? But I don't think that 72 points is going to really phase them. I don't think it's a traumatic loss. I honestly think they will come back home to the Gabba and have a really strong performance against the next team who I'm going to talk about, which is, of course, the Hawthorn Hawks. They just aren't that good. I've been so strong on this. Hawthorn fans absolutely hate my guts, absolutely curse their screen every time I come up on it. But letting North get that close is ridiculous. In a place that should be your fortress, should be a place where you can't lose a game. They obviously got smashed against Melbourne there earlier this season and nearly let North win. I am so steadfast that this is not a premiership threat team. This team cannot win the flag. I do not rate Hawthorn. Happy to be proven wrong, Hawks fans. Worrying signs, and I think they get punched in the face this weekend. I will get to that very shortly. But in that game, it just like, they were always going to win that game. Even when North were performing well, it was always felt like Hawthorn were going to find a way to win. But only 16 points against North, and you were down in the game at stages. It doesn't worry me for their premiership chances. It's like the Brisbane game against Carlton. It's not like, oh my God, I'm so scared for Hawthorn. But it just feels like letting that happen after... I'm only saying this because I've not been big on Hawthorn for a lot of the season. So when I see a performance like that, it kind of vindicates all my feelings towards them. As for Brisbane, I've been big on them all season. So that loss, I look at it as just like a little, yep, let's sweep that one under the carpet. But Hawthorn, how they're playing doesn't fill me with any confidence. They, like, at the end of the day, they're relying on a guy that's 5'5" to score 5 goals in a game to beat North, which worries me. And I know Watto's an extreme talent, but that should not be happening because in finals, you're coming up against better backlines than backlines of whoever North have down there. So, honestly, it is a bit worrying. I think they'll get punched in the face this weekend. And as for the preview for this game, the Hawks almost dropping that game to North should make their fans very, very nervous. Lions looked so bad last week, but I'm confident it'll be a very small hurdle on their way to 3 premierships. Back at the Gabba this week, has dominance written all over it, has a shock, big performance, big win, bounce back, written all over it. Give me the Lions. I know this is controversial, but I think they will do everything they can to smash the Hawks. And I honestly am very confident it will be an absolute Uno reverse of last week's performance against Carlton. My free tip is Brisbane win at $1.82. I think the value is good there to take them head to head. And I think Brisbane win $1.82 is a good bet. And my headline for this game is 3-peat dreams. Brisbane bounced back in a massive way as they remind everyone they're in a desperate pursuit to win that 3rd flag in a row. The next game is actually genuinely a cracker. I think this will be better than a lot of people will maybe predict. It is Melbourne versus Fremantle at the MCG on Saturday. I think the D's last week, it was a gutsy win in the end. I thought they'd drop it, obviously, as I said earlier in the show, and my free tip last week if you were listening. But they were definitely and clearly the better side than the Gold Coast Suns right now. And I knew that, but I thought that it was prime position for Gold Coast to break the streak. And it almost looked like that was going to happen. They were up in that last quarter at one stage, but I respect the fight and outlasting in that last quarter from Melbourne. But let's be honest, Suns are a rabble, so take that win with a grain of salt. Even though I predicted the Suns would win, that was more just based off necessity to win, and their last game at home, just get the win out of the way, get Melbourne away from the MCG, and maybe they will be a little bit vulnerable and drop one after a very good season where they haven't dropped many, to be honest. So credit to Melbourne there. They looked good, they played good, and they got the win, gutsy win, respectable win for sure. As for Fremantle, just too good. They're just too good. Even in that ugly game against the Dogs, like I spoke about before, the Dogs were very defensive. The Dogs flooded and the Dogs just played an ugly style, but Fremantle, they're just too stacked, and it honestly is their premiership to lose. I know, obviously, every week I come on here and say Fremantle and Brisbane and Sydney are chances to knock them off, but this season has just been so impressive. In reality, they should only have one loss because they were smashing Geelong in that game in their round 1, which was opening round for them against the Cats at GMHBA. So in reality, they have got they've got one real loss because that GWS loss was a convincing, like, okay, we are losing this game. That Geelong game was just like early season blues. I put it down to Geelong had played the week before as well, so maybe a bit of rust from Fremantle there. Such an impressive season, and they were never going to lose that game to the Dogs last weekend. Even though at times it looked ugly, I still was confident in Fremantle. Just having too much talent on the park, having too much system on the park, just having everything in a line. Like, the most amazing thing about Fremantle, in my opinion, is their good players aren't even all playing well at the moment. Like, Luke Jackson has fallen off from his previous form early to mid part of the season. This last 4 or 5 weeks, he's cooled off a little bit, but I think he's going to ramp up for finals, which I love. Sarong, this season is probably the first season in the last 4 or 5 where he hasn't had to be dominant. He hasn't had to have 30 disposals every week. He had 17 and 2 goals on the weekend, and you just take that as if you're Fremantle. You're just happy with that because they've got just so many players at the moment. Like I said last week, I'm probably sound like a broken record about Freo, but you've got Brayshaw, you've got Murphy Reid, you've got obviously Sarong, Jackson, your Tracy, your Amos. It's just so much talent. Bolton, who I was very low on to start the season, but he's just shining in this team as well. So Fremantle, what can you say about them other than, wow, they're a good team? As for this game though, I've been so strong on the D's at the G all year long. Clearly, Fremantle are such a better side and obviously have more talent than Melbourne currently and are far further along on their premiership projection than Melbourne's list is. But I've got a big gut feeling about Melbourne here. And I feel like Melbourne really build up this game this weekend and knock them over, boys. For the Dockers, this is just another game. For Melbourne, this will almost be like a finals-like atmosphere, finals-type hype in their own minds. I think the D's either win or cover the line, mainly because the MCG factor, mainly because Fremantle are just that far in front. It just doesn't even matter if they have a little loss here on the way to finals. It's probably not a bad thing to get a little loss away after that GWS game where they lost, just winning again for the next 4 or 5 weeks, however long that's been. So my free tip is the D's plus 13.5 at $1.90, which is a very controversial one, very risky one. So tread carefully. The next game I'm going to preview here is Sydney versus Port Adelaide at the SCG. The Swans last week couldn't lose that game, and it had me worried if they lost that game, because if they lost that game, I was going to take them off my list of premiership teams that can win the premiership. They sit second, but it's not a very dominant second. I feel like there's other teams that that are playing better footy that aren't obviously second on the ladder. The Saints look strong, but the Swans' talent just overloaded them in the end. It was a good Errol game. It's very handy having Errol back to his best, and here's a big chance why I still have them as a premiership chance. Chad's there, Heaney's there, Kerno's there. Their list is good. The injuries are starting to mount up a bit. Like, that loss of McInerney has been very underrated in the grand scheme of things. Like, that is a pretty big loss on their side. They got Errol back, so it kind of evened it all out a bit. But this Sydney team, they're on a knife's edge for me. I still think they can win the flag. I'm still confident, but they have got to be better against better opposition than how they played against St Kilda. And I think this weekend is a good chance to get themselves in very good form once again at home at the SCG. All this team needs, though, all this Sydney team needs is a strong 4 weeks, and they can go all the way. It is the prime example of a team who has enough on their list, obviously, who's going to qualify with a home final with a top 2 position most likely, and that all they need to do is put a good 4 weeks together from that first final to grand final week, and they can go all the way. I'm very confident in that still. As for Port Adelaide last week, this had classic Port in 2026 written all over it. They look competitive and good enough to get some praise. They lose the game and continue to get better draft position as they love. They are playing this year very smart, and I can see a semi-fast rebuild, which will be accelerated with Butters' draft haul. I think losing Butters won't be the worst thing for this Port Adelaide team, and where they are currently, obviously he's a top 10 player in the league, so you never want to lose them. But where this list is, with Carr in his first year, with the academy and father-son picks coming in the next 3 years, I think if you get another top 5 pick, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to get your own pick this year, which is going to be top 5. Maybe another top 5 pick, maybe even fucking pick 1 from Richmond. And then you're off to the races with this list, with this build, in a good time before Tassie come into the competition. As for this weekend, boys, let's stop looking into the future and let's look into round 22, where Sydney and Port play at the SCG. The Swans weren't too crash hot last week, but this week they'll cruise home to a smashing. This will be the first of many smashings to follow for the rest of the round. The line is too low, set at 35.5. Kerno, Heaney, Chad, Errol, all mega, all huge, all love them for punting this week. They are all sure things for all their lines, all their goal markets. Swans by heaps. That's why my free tip is pretty obviously the Swans minus 35.5 at $1.90, which I don't think Port will be too upset about, going over there to the SCG, getting another loss, getting a better draft position, getting ready for the attack of the future. The next game we have here, boys, is Geelong versus Essendon at GMHBA Stadium. Wow, oh wow, this could be another one of those smashings I am referring to. The Cats last week just simply overpowered the Pies early in that game, and it was over in the first quarter. Honestly, as soon as they got up by those 9 goals, I was there and I thought, look, there's no chance. Then they did a pretty good job in the end to hold off the Pies, who got it down to 14 points at one stage, but I was still very, very confident that Geelong would find a way to just hold them off, because once you build a lead that strong, I don't care how hard Collingwood was coming back, and then Maynard goes down with injury. It just didn't seem like a game where Geelong were going to drop after dominating so hard so early. They will cruise home now with the 3 piss easy games to end the season and probably make the 4. I still don't think they're flag bound even with that top 4 finish, which I think the top 4 finish is all but certain. I still don't rate them as a premiership chance. And I think this is a very soft little run home into the finals, which will not prepare them well at all. That Collingwood game was important for them to get the window, to make it now. They've had that Collingwood win. Now they can cruise home with these last 3 games and find themselves in the top 4. So credit to them there. As for their opponent, the Essendon Bombers, they are very shit. They will not win a game for the rest of the season. That is end of story. The Adelaide game went as everybody would have predicted. I'm upset I didn't jump on Riley Thilthorpe for 5 goals because that was a no-brainer right there. Essendon are just just dying for the end of the season. Who's their coach going to be is another thing I had written down. I think they're going to go an Essendon guy. I think it might even be McVeigh, because I think Hurd is just very risky. Or no, to be honest, deep down, give me truth serum. I will probably say I think it's going to be Hurd with Solomon and McVeigh on his coaching staff. I think they're really just going to go in that direction, probably fuck it up. But at the end of the day, it's probably not a bad thing because they're already down the fucking rock bottom. They've hit rock bottom well and clearly. So I think if they go the Hurd direction and in 3 years' time they're still at rock bottom, that's fine because at least you got that out of all these Essendon dickheads' heads where it's like, oh, we need Hurd, we need Essendon people. If you just get it out of their systems, then they can just move on as a club finally. As for this week, it is another smashing for your Saturday. As I always say, it's a formality for this Dons team to get their asses handed to them against any team in the competition, and this Geelong side will not take the foot off the gas. They will hammer them home by 10 goals with ease and play a very convincing game as they try to build momentum going into this final series, and I'm sure they will end the season with 3 big bags, including this game. My free tip is the Cats minus 64.5 at $1.90. The next game is a game which will be another smashing in my opinion. It is Adelaide versus Richmond at Adelaide Oval. The Crows last week played Essendon, so that's all that needs to be said. Huge Thilthorpe game, and they will hope he gets some form after a pretty lackluster season, hence why I back him this week against this Tigers defense to have another one. I think they'd love as well, because Fogarty obviously, after his 18 goals in 3 weeks, goes out with those 3 weeks suspension. So now this is like he's in good form. Like even though he's having this little suspension break, he's had good form. He's feeling good. I think Thilthorpe now, they just want him to have good form. I think they're going to feed him a little bit. I think it's going to be a huge game for Thilthorpe. Another team where they're just cruising into finals with easy as fuck matchups to come. Obviously this Richmond game and the next 2. They should win all 3. They should be a team that should cruise home into the finals like the Cats, as they've already got that top 6 spot locked up and locked away. The Tigers last week got the win, but lost the number 1 pick, which I don't think is that important this year in a draft where there is no clear number 1 pick. Some years it's just better. Some years it's not a bad thing to not have to make the big decision on who the number 1 pick is if it's not clear. Some years it's good to fall and let other teams fuck up. Like, I've got a video coming out on Punters Pod Ethan where North Melbourne had 2 chances to get Nick Watson. They took McKercher and they took Duursma. So, and then if Hawthorn were in the same position, they probably would have taken the chance on Duursma as well. But if you let the other teams fuck up, sometimes the player comes to you that should come to you. Because in reality, that Richmond draft, where they had all those picks, they took Lawler number 1, which obviously was the right pick, but some teams further on in that draft order probably are happy they weren't forced to take Lawler number 1 and just had a player fall to them. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom, them winning that game, getting them 1 pick. Not that important in that draft. I still am not convinced on Uze as this list build savior and as this person who will survive these dark years. I think at the end of these dark years, someone else will come in and just reap the rewards of all this developmental work Uze's done. And that's just what happens sometimes. So you can't be too angry at the club if that happens. At the end of the day, the best players were no one young. It was Taranto, it was Lynch, it was Nank, it was Ross. Banks played a good game, to be fair. Lawler played a good game, to be fair. But I don't think that win was predicated on all of this young talent that Richmond are bringing up. As for this game this weekend, 2017 Grand Final rematch here, and it will obviously have a very different victor to that game back in 2017. Crows will make make it the third smashing in a row from the last 3 games for this round. I have just ran through at Adelaide Oval. This could be ugly. Thilthorpe will back it up what he did last week and bag home another 5. Remember that, boys, when you're watching it. Remember Ethan's player prop. My free tip for this game is the Crows minus 57.5 at $1.90. As we get into the last few games of the round, 3 to go. And finally, we're done with the smashings, I believe. As it is GWS versus Gold Coast at Manuka in Canberra. The roller coaster continues with this Giants side. Decent win against Port last week, who do not care about the results. This team is so frustrating, but this game proved even further to me that they just need to pick direction and head there. They can seriously find themselves in no man's land for the next 4 to 5 years if they don't just pick a direction and either cull all the old players, start rebuilding, or just really build the team around like a Callahan. Because they need to decide where they're going, because this season obviously has just been so up and down, such a roller coaster. I feel like a broken record talking about GWS, but that is the truth. They need to pick a direction. If you want to get rid of Hogan, get rid of Stringer as well, get rid of Canelio, get rid of all these older players and just move on from that era of your club. As for the Suns, it just keeps getting worse. It's actually crazy to say 10 losses in a row. Anderson is literally a shell of himself. How he played last year to this year mind boggles me, how he fell off so badly. Real as a Brownlow medalist is so funny. It's funnier every week. He actually didn't have all too bad of a game, but he's just not a Brownlow medalist in my eyes. Nick Dacos should have got that. The Bont should have got that. Even fucking Cripps probably should have got that over Real last year. King and his 7 touches will fold under pressure when he plays in a Victorian side next year. Obviously, it'll be Hawthorn, but I think the Victorian media will eat him alive for his 7 touches and just no impact on many games once the big contract is in play and once he's in the Victorian media limelight. As for this expansion cup, it will be the lowest rating expansion cup probably since the inaugural season in 2013. Absolutely nothing of interest here. Such a nothing fucking contest, such a nothing game. The Giants are a better side on paper and form-wise, but they also did lose to the Dons a few weeks ago, so you just never know what will happen with this Giants side. I think it's just funny that the Suns have a chance to make it 11 losses in a row, so I'll back the Giants to make that happen at Canberra, Manuka, where the Suns don't go very often, but the Giants like to play there. So, also I went back to Suns because they've just burnt me against the Dogs, against Melbourne, and I don't want them to burn me against the Giants here. So, up the Giants. Giants 1-39 at 220 will be my free tip in this contest. West Coast versus Collingwood is the next game at Optus Stadium. West Coast last week, they lost this game because of that horrible set shot kicking. Waterman's 2 goals, 6 behinds cost them the game entirely. They were actually not too bad. They will end up being better off in the future than this Richmond side, as I stated last week. Reed is starting to look like the real deal. I think Dursma is the real deal. I don't worry too much about that game for West Coast, but they should be probably beating Richmond, in my opinion. It was at the G, and bad set shot kicking is what cost them that contest. As for Collingwood last week, another team who kicked themselves out of the game eventually when they came back into it. They just could not execute when the ball got inside 50. In reality, being those 9 goals down cost them the game, and it was over straight away when that was the margin. The injuries in that backline have officially gone one too many, in my opinion. Maynard, Moore, and Howe leaves them so vulnerable down there. Earlier in the show, I think I said Maynard went down in the game. It was actually obviously Jeremy Howe. Missed a big chance to maybe sneak into 6th. Now pack it up for the wild card for the rest of the season. Survive to the wild card and then see what happens. See if you can get any players back. I still think obviously this Pies team won't do any damage. Even if they win that wild card game, it's probably most likely a first round loss in the finals. But if they get Adelaide Oval, you never know what could happen. Huge danger game for the Pies upcoming here. The backline is shot. It is interstate, but they should still be beating this younger West Coast side. They actually love going interstate and have a very good interstate record. They usually rally together and get the win, and I think that's what will happen here. I think the Eagles will have a good effort, and it will be close and honourable in the end for the Eagles, but the Pies will just be too good. Pies 1-39 at 220 is my free tip. I actually love the Pies interstate. Sometimes even more than I love them when they're playing in Victoria. And the last game of the round is actually a cracker. It is St Kilda versus Carlton, 7:20 on a Sunday night at Marvel. Very odd time slot, but absolute cracker nonetheless. Saints last week, strong performance from a mid-side in my opinion. They've improved a little bit, but let's be honest, for all they did in the offseason, they should be a much better side than they are now. They should be at least definitely in the wild card instead of fighting to get there. They should 1,000,000% have been above where they are. You cannot change my mind about that. I think Ross is a wanker, and I'm happy he won't ever win a flag. It's so clear to me. St Kilda will not win a flag when Ross Lyon is the coach of this side. As for the Blues last week, credit where credit is due. They looked fucking unreal. We're playing on a high. We're playing on momentum. Heard it during the week, and I kind of agree with it. I know Carlton fans are very off me at the moment. Everybody's making videos about me, about how I said Carlton will go 0-7. That is fine. I will take the heat. I do not care. But heard it during the week, and I feel like it might be true. When they don't have to play under pressure, they are great. The second there is a bit of pressure, like the start of the season with Voss, they fold, but you can't take away anything from them and their performance last week. They look great. Well done, Blues, but let's relax. Fraser will get the job, and they will probably be in the same spot they are right now in 3 years' time, which is fighting for the wildcard position. As for the final game of round 22, Eddie's Carlton, Eddie's St Kilda, Eddie's Marvel Stadium, Sunday, 7:20. The Blues are hot after last week. They love Marvel a lot, but so do the Saints. This is a very, very close contest, in my opinion. I think TDK has an absolute blinder here, but the Blues might just get over the line. I like the value for them straight out, based off their form last week. So there you go, Carlton fans. I'll give you the win here. My free tip is the Blues win at $1.73. Too good of value there. I can see it going either way, but based off form and based off teams who I rate more currently, as much as I don't rate Carlton, St Kilda are a mid and lackluster team for all they did in the offseason. So Blues win, $1.73 is my free tip there. All my 9 legs combined, boys, come out to $460.35. Great value there for you. Hopefully I go better than I did last week. My player props this week, obviously, I'll recap them for you here. Hugh McCluggage, 22 plus, $1.90. Thilthorpe, 4 plus goals, $2.85. Ollie Henry, 3 plus goals, $2.08. Obviously, I expect a few smashings this round. Combine those three for $9.85. Thanks once again, boys, for backing me in, listening to a solo episode of me ramble for 41 minutes about the footy, about round 22 of the AFL season. Jez will be back next week, so do not fear. You will not have to hear my voice for a whole 41 minutes next week, maybe only 22. So, thanks once again. Appreciate the love, appreciate the listen. Peace, prosperity, and love. You!